Maya had always been a dreamer, her eyes set on goals that many said were unattainable. Growing up in a modest neighborhood, she was taught the value of perseverance by her mother, who worked two jobs to support the family. Maya's resilience was unshakable, and her determination shone through everything she did. She graduated at the top of her class, earning a degree in business administration, and eventually landed a coveted position at a prestigious corporate firm. At work, Maya was a beacon of excellence. Her attention to detail, ability to handle pressure, and innovative ideas made her stand out among her peers. She was the kind of employee who stayed late to perfect a presentation and showed up early to prepare for the day ahead. Colleagues admired her work ethic, though not everyone celebrated her success. Her boss, Mr. Carter, often dismissed her contributions in meetings, crediting her ideas to others or downplaying her input. "You're good," he'd say with a patronizing tone, "but let's not get ahead of ourselves." Despite this, Maya remained undeterred. She believed in letting her work speak for itself. She spearheaded projects that brought significant revenue to the company, yet promotions seemed to bypass her. She noticed how colleagues with less experience were climbing the corporate ladder while she remained in the same position. The subtle slights and microaggressions were hard to ignore. The casual exclusion from team lunches, the condescending remarks about her natural hair, and the lingering doubt in her co-workers' eyes whenever she presented bold ideas. Still, Maya powered through. She told herself she had to work twice as hard to be seen as half as good, a mantra she had internalized throughout her life. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. Success isn't just about reaching the top. It's about holding your head high while climbing. So Maya climbed, but everything changed on a crisp Monday morning. Maya arrived at the office, her mind brimming with ideas for a new client proposal. As she settled into her desk, she noticed a few colleagues exchanging awkward glances. Moments later, Mr. Carter called her into his office. His expression was cold, his words curt. He accused her of mishandling a critical project, claiming it cost the company a major client. Maya was stunned. She had meticulously managed every aspect of that project, and the client had expressed nothing but satisfaction. Her protests fell on deaf ears. "We've decided to let you go, effective immediately," Mr. Carter said, sliding a termination letter across the desk. The weight of his words hit her like a freight train. Her chest tightened as she tried to make sense of what was happening. The office, a place she had poured her heart and soul into, now felt like an alien battlefield where she had lost a war she didn't even know she was fighting. As she packed her belongings, the silence from her co-workers was deafening. Some avoided eye contact, others murmured half-hearted condolences. A few who had witnessed her brilliance looked outraged but said nothing. Maya's heart ached as she walked out of the office, clutching a box filled with her belongings and shattered dreams. Outside, the world carried on as if nothing had happened. But for Maya, everything had changed. As tears blurred her vision, she vowed that this wasn't the end of her story. Little did she know, this devastating moment would ignite a fire within her that would eventually lead to a triumph far beyond anything she had imagined. The office culture at Maxwell & Company was cutthroat, a simmering pot of competition where the strongest survived and the weak were left behind. Maya had always stood out as a star performer, but in an environment where ambition often bred hostility, her success didn't come without enemies. Her colleagues, many of whom were competing for the same promotions and recognition, often whispered about her behind her back. Some dismissed her achievements as luck, while others attributed them to favoritism, despite the obvious reality that Maya worked harder than anyone else. Over time, the office atmosphere grew increasingly toxic. Cliques formed, each vying for influence and control. Maya, however, stayed away from the drama, choosing to focus on her work. Her resilience didn't sit well with some of her colleagues, especially Nathan, an ambitious junior manager who always seemed threatened by her presence. Nathan had been gunning for a promotion that Maya's brilliance had inadvertently kept out of his reach. Though he masked his resentment with a professional facade, it was clear to anyone paying attention that he saw Maya as an obstacle to his advancement. The breaking point came during the company's most important project of the year, a multi-million-dollar contract with a high-profile client. Maya was entrusted to lead the project, a testament to her capabilities. She poured her energy into it, working late nights, double-checking every detail, and even stepping in to fix mistakes made by her teammates, including Nathan. The final presentation was a triumph, and the client was thrilled, signing the contract on the spot. Maya received a brief acknowledgement from her boss, Mr. Carter, but the praise quickly shifted to Nathan, who had contributed far less, but was louder in taking credit. A week later, trouble began to brew. Rumors circulated that the client had raised concerns about discrepancies in the contract. Maya was caught off guard. She had personally overseen every detail. After an internal review, it was revealed that someone had made unauthorized changes to the final document. The blame landed squarely on Maya's shoulders. Nathan, ever the opportunist, subtly planted doubts about her work ethic. "I'm not saying it was intentional," he said during a team meeting, "but mistakes like these can happen when one person takes on too much." His words, dripping with feigned concern, were enough to sway Mr. Carter, who had always harbored doubts about Maya despite her stellar track record. Maya tried to defend herself, presenting evidence of her meticulous process. She even pointed out discrepancies in the timestamps that suggested someone else had tampered with the document after she submitted it. But her protests were met with cold indifference. Mr. Carter had already made up his mind, and it was easier to scapegoat Maya than to dig deeper into the issue. After all, blaming her served a dual purpose. It appeased the client and eliminated the threat Maya posed to those gunning for higher positions. The meeting in Mr. Carter's office was brief and brutal. He informed her of the company's decision to terminate her employment, citing gross negligence as the reason. Maya sat frozen, her heart pounding as disbelief washed over her. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. She had dedicated years of her life to this company, sacrificing weekends, holidays, and countless hours, only to be discarded over something she hadn't done. "Is there no room for discussion?" she asked, her voice trembling. Mr. Carter leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "This decision is final. You're a talented worker, Maya, but this incident has damaged the company's reputation. It's best for everyone if we part ways." Her throat tightened as she fought back tears. The humiliation of being accused of something she didn't do was overwhelming. But worse was the realization that no one was willing to stand up for her. The co-workers who had praised her work a week ago now avoided her gaze, unwilling to risk their own positions by defending her. The walk back to her desk felt like an eternity. Her colleagues watched in silence as she packed her belongings, their expressions a mix of discomfort and pity. A few muttered half-hearted words of sympathy, but no one offered real support. Nathan passed by her desk, his expression smugly neutral, as though he had already forgotten the role he played in her downfall. One coworker, Emily, a kind-hearted junior employee, approached Maya with tears in her eyes. "This isn't fair," she whispered. "We all know you didn't do this." Maya managed a weak smile. "Thank you, Emily. That means more than you know." With her box of belongings in hand, Maya walked through the office one last time. She kept her head high, refusing to let them see how broken she felt. But the moment she stepped outside, the weight of it all came crashing down. Tears streamed down her face as she sat on a nearby bench, clutching her box like a lifeline. Her mind raced with questions. How could this happen? Why hadn't anyone defended her? Had all her hard work been for nothing? Anger simmered beneath her heartbreak, a quiet but growing flame fueled by the injustice of it all. She replayed the events in her mind, searching for answers, but all she could see was the betrayal and the toxic system that allowed it to happen. In that moment, Maya made a promise to herself. This wasn't going to be the end of her story. She would rebuild her life, not out of spite, but to prove to herself and to the world that she was more than the circumstances that had tried to define her. Maya's life took a nosedive after she was fired. The first few weeks were a whirlwind of emotions: shock, anger, and an overwhelming sense of betrayal. Every morning she woke up feeling like the walls of her tiny apartment were closing in on her. The steady paycheck she had grown accustomed to was gone, and with it, the security that had kept her life on track. Bills piled up on the kitchen counter, a constant reminder of how quickly things had spiraled out of control. At first, she tried to convince herself that this was just a temporary setback. "I'll find something else soon," she told herself. But as the days turned into weeks, rejection after rejection from job applications began to chip away at her confidence. The same industry that had once embraced her talent now seemed closed off. Maya couldn't help but wonder if whispers of her unfair dismissal had followed her, tarnishing her reputation before she even had the chance to explain. The financial strain was suffocating. Her savings, modest to begin with, dwindled rapidly as she struggled to cover rent, groceries, and utilities. Nights were sleepless, spent staring at the ceiling and calculating how long she could keep things afloat. The emotional toll was even worse. She felt isolated, embarrassed to share her story with friends and family for fear of being judged or pitied. Self-doubt crept in, gnawing at her spirit. Was I not good enough? Did I really make a mistake? Maybe they were right to fire me. But beneath the despair, a quiet fire began to burn. Maya thought back to her childhood, to the countless times she had seen her mother face adversity with grace and strength. Her mother had always said, "Life isn't fair, but you can't let it stop you. You just keep moving." These words echoed in her mind, reminding her of the resilience that had carried her through so many challenges before. One afternoon, as Maya sorted through her belongings, she stumbled upon an old journal. Flipping through its pages, she found notes from a seminar she had attended early in her career. The speaker, a successful entrepreneur, had talked about turning setbacks into opportunities. One quote stood out: "When the system fails you, build your own." Maya felt a jolt of inspiration. She realized she had been waiting for someone else to validate her worth, but maybe it was time to take control of her own narrative. With renewed determination, Maya began to rebuild her life, one step at a time. The first step was upskilling. She enrolled in online courses, using whatever free resources she could find to sharpen her skills in project management, digital marketing, and entrepreneurship. She spent long hours watching tutorials, taking notes, and practicing what she learned. It wasn't easy. Her laptop was outdated and her internet connection was unreliable. But she pressed on, driven by the belief that knowledge was her ticket to a brighter future. Next, she turned her attention to building something of her own. Drawing on her experience in corporate strategy, she decided to start a consulting business. It was a modest operation at first, just her laptop, and a simple website she built using free tools. She began by reaching out to small businesses in her community, offering affordable consultations to help them streamline their operations and improve their bottom line. Her first few clients came through word of mouth, and though the pay was modest, it gave her the confidence to keep going. There were setbacks, of course. Maya faced skepticism from potential clients who questioned her credentials and struggled to secure funding to grow her business. But every obstacle she faced only strengthened her resolve. She networked tirelessly, attending community events and online forums to make connections and learn from others. Slowly but surely, her business began to gain traction. During this time, Maya drew strength from the people who believed in her. Emily, the junior colleague who had supported her on the day she was fired, stayed in touch and often sent words of encouragement. "You're doing amazing," she would say, "and I can't wait to see where this journey takes you." Maya also reconnected with an old mentor, Mrs. Johnson, a retired businesswoman who had been her professor in college. Mrs. Johnson became a source of wisdom and guidance, reminding Maya that failure wasn't the end. It was a stepping stone to success. One pivotal moment came during a conversation with Mrs. Johnson. "You know, Maya," she said, sipping her tea, "I've always believed that when people like us, women, black women, succeed, it's not just a personal victory, it's a statement. It's a reminder that no matter how unfair the world can be, we're not defined by its limits." Those words stayed with Maya, becoming a mantra that fueled her every move. She began to see her struggles not as a burden, but as a badge of honor. Each rejection, each sleepless night, each small victory was a testament to her resilience and strength. She realized that her journey was about more than just survival. It was about proving to herself that she was capable of greatness, no matter the odds. Months turned into a year, and Maya's consulting business grew beyond what she had imagined. She secured larger contracts, hired a small team, and even started mentoring other young professionals who had faced similar challenges. Her financial situation stabilized, and for the first time in a long time, she felt truly proud of what she had built. But Maya wasn't done. As her business flourished, an idea began to take root in her mind, one that would bring her journey full circle. She wasn't just going to move on from the injustice she had faced. She was going to reclaim her power in the most profound way possible. And so, with quiet determination, Maya began to lay the groundwork for her ultimate comeback, returning to Maxwell and Company, not as an employee, but as the owner. Maya's comeback journey began as a slow crawl, but soon transformed into a relentless climb. After months of uncertainty and hard work, her consulting business started gaining traction. Small victories turned into significant milestones, each one marking a step closer to her dreams. But for Maya, this journey was about more than just success. It was about reclaiming her self-worth and proving, most importantly to herself, that she was capable of greatness. The first major breakthrough came when Maya landed her first big client, a regional chain of boutique stores struggling with inefficiencies. It was a high-stakes contract for her fledgling business, but Maya approached it with the same precision and dedication that had defined her corporate career. She poured hours into analyzing their operations, designing a streamlined strategy that reduced costs and increased profits. When the results exceeded expectations, the client was thrilled, and word spread quickly. Other businesses began reaching out to Maya, impressed by her reputation for delivering tangible results. She hired her first employee, a young woman named Sophia, who shared Maya's vision and drive. Together, they worked tirelessly to expand their reach, taking on more clients and larger projects. Each new contract came with its own set of challenges. Some clients were skeptical of her small team, while others balked at the idea of taking advice from someone they perceived as too young or inexperienced. But Maya had learned to stand her ground. With every successful project, she silenced her doubters and solidified her reputation as a force to be reckoned with. The journey wasn't without its hurdles. Maya faced cash flow issues, difficult clients, and the lingering shadow of self-doubt. There were nights when she lay awake, questioning whether she had taken on more than she could handle. But each time, she reminded herself of the pain of her dismissal, the humiliation, the injustice, the silence of her colleagues. That memory became her fuel. She also drew inspiration from her support network. Emily, her former colleague, remained a steadfast cheerleader, often reminding Maya of how far she had come. Mrs. Johnson continued to mentor her, offering wisdom and a steady hand during moments of doubt. "Success isn't linear," Mrs. Johnson often said, "but every setback is just another step forward if you let it be." One of Maya's most profound moments of reflection came during a quiet evening at her office. A modest rented space she had transformed into a thriving hub of activity. She found herself staring at an old photo of her team at Maxwell and Company. She noticed her own face, beaming with pride, oblivious to the betrayal that awaited her. The memories stung, but instead of bitterness, she felt a newfound clarity. That wasn't my failure, she thought. It was theirs. They couldn't see my worth, but I'll make sure no one can ever ignore it again. As Maya's business grew, so did her ambitions. She expanded her services to include leadership coaching, helping other professionals navigate the corporate world's complexities. Her company began hosting workshops and webinars, attracting attention from national organizations. The revenue poured in, allowing Maya to reinvest in her business and hire a team of skilled professionals. Her biggest milestone came when she secured a partnership with a major corporate client, a multinational firm struggling to adapt to the post-pandemic economy. Maya's innovative strategies helped them recover millions in lost revenue, earning her widespread acclaim. Media outlets began to take notice, featuring her story as a tale of resilience and empowerment. The recognition brought more opportunities her way, and soon, Maya found herself at the helm of a multi-million-dollar enterprise. Despite her success, Maya remained grounded. She often reflected on the journey that had brought her here, remembering the sting of her firing and the fire it had ignited within her. Each time she closed a deal or received an award, she felt a quiet sense of vindication, not for the world, but for herself. As her business flourished, Maya began to think about how she could turn her personal victory into a symbolic one. The idea came to her during a conversation with Mrs. Johnson, who mentioned that success isn't just about moving forward. Sometimes it's about going back and reclaiming what was taken from you. One evening, Maya stumbled upon an article announcing that Maxwell and Company was struggling financially. The company had lost several major clients and was downsizing. Their downtown office building, the very place where Maya had been fired, was up for sale. The moment she read those words, a sense of purpose gripped her. This wasn't just an opportunity, it was destiny. Maya began laying the groundwork for her boldest move yet. She met with her financial advisors, ran the numbers, and realized that purchasing the building was within her reach. But she didn't just want to buy it, she wanted to turn it into something meaningful. She spent weeks crafting a meticulous plan. She would transform the building into the new headquarters for her company, creating a workspace that fostered collaboration, inclusivity, and growth, the exact opposite of the toxic environment she had endured. It would be a place where no one felt undervalued or overlooked, where talent was celebrated and nurtured. As the deal moved forward, Maya kept her plans under wraps. Only her closest confidants knew what she was planning, and even they didn't know the full extent of her vision. The process wasn't without challenges. Negotiations with the sellers were tense, and there were moments when it seemed the deal might fall through. But Maya remained steadfast, her determination unshaken. In the weeks leading up to the closing, Maya couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and nerves. She thought about the moment she would walk through those familiar doors, not as an employee, but as the owner. She envisioned the look on Mr. Carter's face when he realized that the woman he had dismissed as expendable was now his successor in the most literal sense. The night before the deal was finalized, Maya stood in front of the building, gazing up at its imposing facade. Memories flooded her mind, both painful and empowering. She took a deep breath, her heart swelling with pride. This is it, she thought. This is what all the struggle was for. Little did she know, the next chapter of her journey would not only redefine her life, but also leave an indelible mark on everyone who had doubted her. The day Maya walked back into the office of Maxwell and Company, the air seemed to shift. The familiar glass facade, the revolving doors, and even the faint buzz of office chatter were the same, yet everything felt different. This time, she wasn't stepping through those doors as an employee. She wasn't there to sit at a desk, quietly doing her job while others reaped the rewards of her hard work. This time, she walked in as the owner. Dressed in a sleek, tailored suit, Maya exuded confidence. Her head was high, her stride steady. Her assistant trailed behind her, carrying a small stack of folders as they made their way through the lobby. The receptionist glanced up and froze, her eyes widening in recognition. "Maya," she stammered, her voice a mixture of surprise and disbelief. Maya offered a polite but firm smile. "Good morning. I have a meeting in the boardroom." The receptionist, still flustered, nodded quickly and motioned for her to proceed. As Maya stepped into the elevator, memories of her last day flooded back. Her tear-streaked face, the stares of her colleagues, the heavy box in her hands. But those memories didn't sting anymore. They only fueled her resolve. When the elevator doors opened on the top floor, the reaction was immediate. Employees froze mid-conversation, their eyes locking onto her. Whispers began to ripple through the office like an electric current. "Is that—" "No way. That's Maya." Nathan, the junior manager who had played a key role in her firing, was one of the first to notice her. His smug demeanor faltered, replaced by visible discomfort. He glanced around nervously, as if searching for an escape. Maya didn't look his way. She didn't need to. Her presence was enough to unnerve him. At the far end of the office, Mr. Carter emerged from his glass-walled office, his expression shifting from annoyance to shock as he spotted Maya. His jaw tightened, and for a moment he looked as though he might turn and retreat. But he didn't. Instead, he straightened his tie and approached her, his face a mask of forced composure. "Maya," he said, his voice carefully measured. "What brings you back here?" Maya paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. "Good morning, Mr. Carter," she replied, her tone professional yet commanding. "I believe you've been informed that the office has been sold." Mr. Carter blinked, clearly caught off guard. "Yes, I was notified, but I didn't realize that I'm the new owner." Maya finished for him, her gaze steady. Surprise. The color drained from his face. He opened his mouth to speak, but Maya held up a hand. "Let's save the conversation for the boardroom, shall we? I believe the leadership team is expecting me." Without waiting for a response, she turned and made her way to the boardroom, leaving Mr. Carter to trail behind her. Inside, the room was already filled with senior staff members, most of whom had played some role, however small, in her downfall. Their faces ranged from stunned to sheepish as she entered. Maya took her place at the head of the table, her presence commanding the room. She began the meeting with calm professionalism, explaining the transition of ownership and her plans for the office. Her tone was measured, but her words carried weight. "This company has been through a lot," she said, "and while it has achieved great things, it has also failed in some areas, particularly in creating an environment where talent is recognized and nurtured fairly." Her gaze swept across the room, lingering for a moment on Nathan and Mr. Carter. Both men avoided her eyes. "I've learned a lot since I left this office," she continued. "I've learned the value of resilience, of perseverance, and of creating opportunities for those who might otherwise be overlooked. My vision for this company is simple: to build a culture where everyone, regardless of their background, has the chance to thrive." The room was silent as her words sank in. Some of the employees looked genuinely moved, while others squirmed uncomfortably. Mr. Carter, for his part, remained stoic, though the tension in his shoulders betrayed his unease. After the meeting, Maya invited employees to speak with her individually, offering a chance for them to share their thoughts and concerns. Many approached her tentatively, expressing excitement about the changes she had outlined. A few, including Emily, the junior colleague who had supported her on her last day, approached her with tears in their eyes. "I always knew you'd do something amazing," Emily said, her voice trembling with emotion. "But I never imagined you'd come back like this." Maya smiled warmly. "Thank you, Emily. And thank you for believing in me when no one else did. People like you are the reason I'm here." When it came time to address Mr. Carter and Nathan, Maya maintained her grace. She called them into her office, the one that had once belonged to Mr. Carter, and offered them the chance to speak. Nathan fumbled through a half-hearted apology, his confidence completely eroded. Mr. Carter, on the other hand, maintained his professional facade, though his words carried a hint of resignation. "I underestimated you," he admitted, his tone grudging. "I can see now that was a mistake." Maya met his gaze evenly. "Yes, it was. But I'm not here to hold grudges, Mr. Carter. I'm here to lead this company into a better future. Whether you'll be part of that is up to you." In the weeks that followed, Maya set about transforming the office. She implemented policies to promote inclusivity and equity, established mentorship programs for junior employees, and created a system where hard work and talent were genuinely rewarded. The changes were met with initial resistance from some, but over time, even the skeptics began to see the value in her vision. For Maya, the most satisfying part of her return wasn't the power or the vindication, it was the opportunity to create something meaningful. As she walked through the halls of the office she now owned, she felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The space that had once symbolized her greatest humiliation was now a testament to her resilience, her strength, and her determination to rise above. And this time, as she stood by the window of her corner office, gazing out at the city skyline, Maya felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: peace. Her journey had come full circle, and she was finally where she was meant to be. As Maya sat in her new corner office, the one she had once walked past as an ambitious employee dreaming of her future, she couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. The journey had been anything but easy, marked by betrayal, hardship, and moments of despair. Yet it was precisely those trials that had forged her into the person she had become, a woman of strength, resilience, and purpose. Her story wasn't just about personal triumph. It was about justice. It was about reclaiming her dignity and proving not just to the world, but to herself, that she was more than the limits others had placed on her. Maya knew her journey would resonate with countless others who had faced discrimination, been undervalued, or told they didn't belong. She hoped her success would be a beacon of hope for them, a reminder that even in the face of injustice, there is always a path forward. Maya often reflected on a lesson her mother had taught her. When life knocks you down, don't just stand up, stand taller. Those words had carried her through her darkest days and guided her as she built a life she could be proud of. She had faced humiliation and heartbreak, but turned those experiences into fuel for her dreams. Every sleepless night, every rejection, every ounce of doubt had been worth it to reach this moment. In the days following her return, Maya received an outpouring of messages, some from old colleagues who expressed admiration for her resilience, others from strangers who had heard her story and found inspiration in her journey. She read each one with a deep sense of gratitude, knowing that her experiences had the power to impact others. Her leadership at Maxwell and Company quickly began to redefine the company's culture. Maya's policies of inclusivity and fairness created an environment where employees felt valued and empowered. She established mentorship programs, ensuring that no one would face the isolation and lack of support she had once endured. Her decisions weren't just about fixing the company's problems. They were about creating a workplace that celebrated talent and hard work, regardless of someone's background. But for Maya, the most fulfilling part of her journey wasn't the accolades or the success. It was the ability to give back. She started initiatives to support young professionals from underprivileged communities, offering them internships and training programs to help them succeed in the corporate world. She wanted to ensure that the doors she had opened for herself would remain open for others. As she reflected on her story, Maya understood that the injustice she had faced was not unique. It was a reflection of a system that often failed to recognize the worth of people who didn't fit its narrow mold. But she also knew that change was possible. She was living proof of it. Her story wasn't just a victory for herself. It was a reminder that resilience and determination could turn even the greatest setbacks into stepping stones for something extraordinary. One afternoon, as she walked through the office, she stopped by a desk where Emily, the junior colleague who had supported her on her last day, was working on a project. Emily looked up and smiled. "It's hard to believe all this started with you being fired," she said, her tone both amused and awed. Maya chuckled softly. "Sometimes the worst things that happen to us turn out to be the best things," she replied. "It just takes time to see it." As Maya returned to her office and gazed out at the city skyline, she felt a profound sense of peace. The woman who had walked out of this building in tears a year ago was not the same woman who had returned. She had grown, transformed, and discovered a strength within herself that she hadn't known existed. And in doing so, she had not only changed her own life, but also inspired others to believe in their own power. Maya's journey was a testament to the power of resilience, justice, and empowerment. It was a reminder that even in the face of adversity, there is always a path forward. And sometimes, that path doesn't just lead to redemption, it leads to greatness.